Bullies pour juice on wheelchair-bound girl. The next day, her military father comes to school. Sergeant Michael Johnson had been away from home for 6 months when he received the call that would change everything. His wife Sarah was crying so hard she could barely speak, telling him about something terrible that had happened to Emily at school. What Michael didn't expect was to discover that 2 boys had deliberately poured orange juice on his daughter's uniform, filming everything while she tried to clean herself, humiliated in her wheelchair. The cruel laughter echoed through the schoolyard as other students watched in silence. 24 hours later, Michael parked his car in front of St. Vincent Academy on the west side of Chicago. He was still wearing his combat uniform, having just arrived from the military base at Fort Bragg. His firm steps echoed through the school hallway as he headed to the principal's office. Staff members slightly bowed as he passed, recognizing the authority emanating from his posture. The principal, Mrs. Margaret Wilson, a woman in her early 50s with graying hair pulled into a strict bun, was in her office when Michael knocked on the door. She had already been informed of his arrival. "Sergeant Johnson, please have a seat," she said, gesturing to the chair in front of her desk. "I imagine you're here because of the incident involving your daughter." Michael remained standing, his hands crossed behind his back. "Incident?" he repeated, his voice controlled but filled with tension. "Principal, what happened to my daughter was an act of deliberate humiliation. I want to know what measures have been taken." Margaret adjusted her glasses and shuffled some papers on her desk. "Well, we spoke with the boys involved. Tyler Thompson and Brandon Wilson are exemplary students, sons of highly respected families in our community. I believe it was just a prank that got out of hand." The principal's words hit Michael like a punch in the stomach. A prank? He had seen Emily's emotional state when she came home the night before. His 15-year-old daughter, who had always been strong and determined despite her physical limitations, was completely shattered. "I want to see the security camera footage," said Michael, his voice still controlled. Margaret hesitated for a few seconds before responding. "Unfortunately, there was a technical problem with the system on Monday. The footage from that period was corrupted, and we couldn't recover it." Michael knew evasion tactics very well. He had interrogated enough people in his military career to recognize when someone was lying. The nervousness in Margaret's voice, the way she avoided direct eye contact, everything indicated that something was very wrong with that story. "I understand," he said simply. "I would like to speak with those responsible for the school's security department." "I'm afraid that won't be necessary, Sergeant. As I said, it was just a misunderstanding among teenagers. I'm sure we can resolve this amicably." Michael nodded slowly, but his mind was already working. He knew that kind of institutional protectionism. He knew he would need to investigate on his own. "Where can I find the parents of the boys involved?" he asked. "Well, Mr. Thompson owns the largest car dealership in the region, and Mr. Wilson has a very successful construction company. They are very influential people and generous to our institution." The message was clear. Michael understood perfectly what Margaret was trying to communicate, without saying it directly. Those boys were untouchable because their parents had power and money. When Michael left the school, his mind was boiling with indignation, but also with determination. He had faced much more difficult situations in combat, and he wouldn't be intimidated by a cowardly principal and spoiled parents. At home, he found Emily locked in her room. Sarah, his wife, a 42-year-old nurse with kind but worried eyes, greeted him at the door. "How was it at school?" she asked, noticing the tense expression on her husband's face. "As I expected," replied Michael. "They're protecting the boys, but this isn't going to stand." He went upstairs and gently knocked on Emily's bedroom door. "Honey, can I come in?" Silence stretched for a few seconds before a faint voice answered, "Yes, Dad." Michael opened the door and found his daughter lying on the bed, still in her pajamas. Emily had inherited her mother's dark eyes and her father's determination, but at that moment she looked much younger than her 15 years. "How are you feeling?" he asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I don't want to go back to that school anymore, Dad," she said without looking at him. "Everyone saw what they did. Everyone laughed." Michael felt a deep pain in his chest. Emily had been through so much since the car accident 3 years earlier, which left her paraplegic. She had fought to adapt, returned to school, done physical therapy, kept her grades high. Seeing her strength being broken like that made him furious. "Tell me exactly what happened," he requested. Emily took a deep breath before starting. "I was in the courtyard during recess, talking with Jessica about the history assignment. Tyler and Brandon came up from behind. I didn't even see them coming. Suddenly I felt something cold and sticky on my blouse." She stopped, swallowing her tears. "They had poured orange juice on me on purpose." Everyone stopped to look. Tyler was filming with his phone and laughing loudly, saying he was going to post it on social media. Brandon said I looked like a traffic cone with that orange stain. Anger grew in Michael's chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Did anyone else see this?" "Everyone saw, Dad, but nobody did anything. Teacher Karen was even nearby, but when I looked at her asking for help, she just shook her head and walked away. And then I tried to go to the bathroom to clean up, but my blouse was all stained. I spent the rest of the day like that, with everyone staring at me. When school was out, Tyler walked close to me and said that was just the beginning." Michael clenched his fists but kept his voice gentle. "Honey, I want you to know this isn't going to stand. No one has the right to treat you this way." "But Dad, they're the sons of important people. Everyone at school is afraid of them." "So what?" said Michael, looking directly into his daughter's eyes. "Do you think I'm afraid of spoiled boys?" For a moment, Emily gave a faint smile. "No, Dad." "Then trust me. I'll handle this the right way, but I will handle it." That night, Michael stayed up late, researching online about Tyler Thompson and Brandon Wilson. He discovered that both came from extremely wealthy families. Tyler's father, Richard Thompson, indeed owned several car dealerships and had considerable wealth. Brandon's father, Charles Wilson, was a construction businessman involved in several major urban projects. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. On the boys' social media, Michael found several photos flaunting expensive cars, trips, designer clothes. He also noticed a worrying pattern of mean posts about other schoolmates, always disguised as jokes. The next day, Michael decided to make an unexpected visit to the school during class hours. He wanted to observe the dynamics among the students without anyone knowing of his presence. He parked across the street and walked to the school gates. He got a good view of the yard through the fence. During the morning break, he saw Tyler and Brandon corner a younger girl near the cafeteria. Even from a distance, Michael could tell the girl was clearly uncomfortable. "Can I help you?" A woman's voice startled him. Michael turned and saw a middle-aged woman wearing the school staff uniform. "I'm a student's parent here," he explained. "Michael Johnson, Emily Johnson's father." "Oh, yes," said the woman, and Michael noticed an immediate change in her expression. "I'm Dorothy. I've worked in cleaning here for 15 years. I know your daughter well. She's a lovely girl." "Thank you," said Michael. "Did you witness what happened to her on Monday?" Dorothy looked around nervously before answering. "I did, sir. And it wasn't the first time those boys have picked on her." "What do you mean?" "They've been doing it for months, always when no teachers are around. They call her ugly names, make mean jokes. Monday was the worst because they decided to film it." Michael felt his blood boil, but kept his voice calm. "Why doesn't anyone do anything?" "Because their parents donate a lot of money to the school, sir. The principal has strict orders not to bother those families, and the boys know it." "Did you see the security camera footage?" Dorothy hesitated before answering. "Sir, can I trust you?" "Of course." "The cameras recorded everything. I was cleaning the windows in the office when I saw Walter, the security officer, downloading the files on the computer. But an hour later, the principal came in and ordered him to delete everything." Michael felt a mix of anger and relief. Anger at confirming there was a conspiracy to protect the bullies, but relief at knowing evidence existed. "Does Walter still work here?" "Yes, he does, but he's been very nervous since Monday." "I don't think he agreed with what they did. Where can I find him?" "He has lunch every day at Joe's Diner right on the corner at noon sharp." Michael thanked Dorothy and left. Now he had a concrete lead to follow. At noon, Michael was at Joe's Diner, a simple establishment serving homemade food for local workers. When Walter entered, Michael recognized him immediately. He was a man of about 50, with graying hair and a tired expression. Michael approached his table. "Mr. Walter, I'm Michael Johnson, Emily's father. Can we talk?" Walter looked around nervously. "Sir, I work at the school. I can't—" "Please," Michael interrupted, sitting across from him. "I just want to understand what happened to my daughter." Walter sighed heavily. "You seem like an honest man," he said, "and I have children too. If it were me, I'd want someone to help." "Then help me." "The cameras recorded everything, Mr. Johnson, the entire incident from start to finish. It was clear evidence that those boys deliberately humiliated your daughter." "And what happened to that footage?" "The principal called me personally and ordered me to delete everything, said it was for the school's good, that we didn't need unnecessary scandal." "Did you delete it?" Walter looked directly into Michael's eyes. "Formally, yes. But, sir, I've been in security for 20 years. I always back up important situations." Michael felt his heart race. "Do you still have the footage?" "Yes, I do. And I also have other recordings from recent months showing those boys doing this regularly to several students. Your daughter isn't the only victim." "Why didn't you report it before?" "To whom, sir? The school administration protects them, and I need my job. I have 2 daughters in college." Michael understood Walter's situation perfectly. He knew how hard it was to do the right thing when economic pressures were involved. "If I guaranteed your protection, would you give me a copy of those images? You're military, right? Do you know how to deal with these educational authorities?" "Yes, I do. And I have contacts who can help ensure nothing happens to you." Walter thought for a few seconds before agreeing. "All right, but it has to be discreet. If they find out it was me—" "No one will find out," Michael assured. They arranged a meeting for that evening in a neutral location where Walter would hand over the images. When Michael got home, he found a situation that made him even more outraged. Sarah was in the living room, comforting Emily, who was crying uncontrollably. "What happened?" he asked. "Someone posted Monday's video on Instagram," Sarah explained. "Several people from the school have already seen it and are commenting." Michael saw Emily's phone on the coffee table. The screen showed the video of the incident, with over 200 views and dozens of malicious comments. Tyler had indeed carried out his threat. "Sweetheart, this will be used against them," Michael said, sitting beside her. "The more evidence they create, the easier it will be to prove what they did." "But Dad, everyone's laughing at me. They say I deserve it because I'm a cripple." Emily's words cut through Michael's heart like a blade. He hugged his daughter tightly. "Listen carefully to what I'm going to tell you," he murmured. "You are not a cripple. You are one of the strongest people I know, and those people laughing now will regret it very soon." That night, Michael met Walter in a supermarket parking lot. The security guard brought a flash drive with all the recordings from the last 6 months. "There's enough material there to sue those boys and the school itself," Walter said. "They do this systematically. Your daughter suffered the worst attack, but there are at least 5 other students who are regular victims." Michael carefully put away the flash drive. "Thank you very much, Walter. You did the right thing." "I hope so, Mr. Johnson. I hope you can get justice." Back home, Michael spent the early hours analyzing the footage. What he saw made him even more indignant. Tyler and Brandon had a pattern of targeting vulnerable students, younger kids, shy ones, or those with physical limitations, and systematically humiliating them. There were recordings of them pushing books off a boy with a hearing aids desk, spilling water in an overweight girl's backpack, making obscene gestures at an exchange student who barely spoke English. And in every case, the school administration simply ignored or downplayed the incidents. Michael also noticed something disturbing in the footage. The 2 boys seemed to take special pleasure in filming their actions. It was as if they were collecting trophies of their humiliations. The next morning, Michael made a decision. He would go to the boys' parents' workplaces and confront them directly. He wanted to give them a chance to resolve the situation civilly before taking more drastic measures. First, he headed to Thompson Motors, an imposing dealership on the city's main avenue. The facade was modern, with luxury cars on display in the showroom. Michael entered wearing his military uniform, drawing curious looks from the salespeople. He asked to speak with Richard Thompson. "May I ask what this is about?" the receptionist inquired. "It's about his son Tyler. I'm the father of a schoolmate of his." A few minutes later, Richard Thompson appeared. He was a man of about 45, well-dressed, with the air of someone accustomed to being the most important person in the room. "Mr. Johnson, isn't it?" he said, extending his hand. "Let's go to my office." Richard's office was luxurious, with expensive furniture and several photos of him with local politicians. On the wall, a business administration diploma and certificates of business awards. "How can I help you?" asked Richard, sitting behind his executive desk. "Mr. Thompson, your son humiliated my daughter at school on Monday. She uses a wheelchair, and he spilled juice on her clothes while filming everything." Richard sighed, as if it were just a minor inconvenience. "Mr. Johnson, boys will be boys. I'm sure he meant no harm." "Boys will be boys," repeated Michael, controlling his voice. "Your son posted the video on social media to humiliate my daughter even more." "Look, Mr. Johnson," said Richard, adopting a firmer tone, "my son is an excellent student. If there was any misunderstanding, I'm sure we can resolve this between gentlemen." Richard opened a desk drawer and pulled out a checkbook. "How much would it cost for your daughter to get a new uniform and for us to forget this incident?" Michael felt anger rising like lava in a volcano, but kept his composure. "Are you trying to bribe me?" "I'm trying to solve a problem in a practical way. I know military families don't always have abundant resources. I can be generous." Michael stood up slowly. "Mr. Thompson, you just made a very serious mistake. Now, this is no longer just about a childish prank. It's about a businessman trying to buy his way out of an ethical problem." "Don't threaten me, Mr. Johnson," said Richard, also standing up. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. I have friends in important places." "And I have evidence in safe places," Michael replied. He left the dealership even more determined. Richard's arrogance had confirmed his suspicions. Those men thought money made them untouchable. The next stop was Charles Wilson's construction company. The office was in a modern commercial building, with gold plaques indicating Wilson and Sons Construction. Charles Wilson was even more imposing than Richard, a tall, burly man of about 50. His handshake was too firm, typical of someone who wanted to establish physical dominance from the first contact. "Mr. Johnson, I heard you've been visiting the parents of my son's friends," said Charles without preamble. "Richard called me a little while ago." "Then you already know why I'm here." "Yes, I do. And I came to make you a better proposal than Richard's." Charles pointed to a chair, but Michael remained standing. "My son sometimes goes too far with pranks," continued Charles, "but he's a good boy. How about if he apologizes to your daughter, and she also gets a full scholarship to a better private school?" "A better school? The current one isn't good enough for you?" "Well, let's just say it would be better for everyone if your daughter changed environments." Michael understood perfectly what Charles was suggesting. They wanted to remove the problem instead of correcting their son's behavior. "And if I refuse your proposal?" Charles stepped closer, invading Michael's personal space. "Mr. Johnson, I'm a businessman. I know how things work in this city. I can make your life very difficult or very easy. The choice is yours." Michael also took a step forward, closing the distance between them even more. "Mr. Wilson, I'm a trained military man. I've faced people much more dangerous than you. And unlike you, I'm not afraid of a fair fight." For a moment, the two men stared at each other in silence. Charles was the first to back down. "All right, Mr. Johnson. I see you want to do this the hard way. Just don't say you weren't warned." When Michael left Charles's company, his phone rang. It was Sarah. "Michael, you need to come home right now," she said, clearly upset. "What happened?" "A woman came here, said she's the lawyer for the boy's parents. She was very aggressive, talking about lawsuits and defamation." Michael sped up the car. The war had officially begun. At home, he found an elegant woman around 40 years old sitting in the living room. She wore an expensive suit and carried a leather briefcase. Sarah was sitting on the couch, visibly tense. "Mr. Johnson," the woman said, standing up, "I'm attorney Patricia Morgan, representing the Thompson and Wilson families." How can I help you? I'm here to advise you on the legal consequences of your actions. My clients informed me that you visited them today, making unfounded accusations against their minor children. Michael crossed his arms. Unfounded accusations? Exactly. And I also understand you've been spreading slander about my clients in the school community. This constitutes defamation and could result in criminal charges. Counselor, I have evidence for everything I've claimed. What evidence? She asked with a cynical smile. The school's security cameras didn't record anything on the day in question. Interesting that you know that. Mr. Johnson, my clients are respected members of the community. Any attempt to damage their reputation will be met with the full force of the law. And what if I prove your clients are guilty? Then you'd better have very solid evidence, because my clients have the resources for a lengthy legal battle. Do you? Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The attorney left, leaving a clear threat in the air. Michael realized he had underestimated his opponent's organization and resources. They weren't just parents protecting spoiled children. They were a coordinated group willing to use all their power to silence any opposition. That night, Michael called his younger brother David, who worked as an investigative journalist in Chicago. David, I need your help, he said. Of course, bro, what's up? Michael explained the whole situation, from the initial incident to the intimidation attempts. Man, this is reporting material, David said. Systematic bullying protected by economic power. This is exactly the kind of story people need to know about. But it needs to be done right. I can't expose Emily more than she already has been. Leave it to me. I know education reporters who know how to handle cases involving minors. I'll make some calls. Meanwhile, Michael decided to investigate the boys' backgrounds more deeply. Using his military investigation skills, he began mapping Tyler and Brandon's behavior on social media. What he found was disturbing. Both had extensive histories of malicious posts about schoolmates. There were racist, homophobic, and ableist comments scattered throughout their accounts. More worryingly, he found evidence that they encouraged other students to join in the humiliation. Michael also discovered that Tyler had been expelled from 2 previous schools for aggressive behavior, but always managed to transfer to better institutions thanks to his father's influence. The next day, Michael had an idea. He decided to talk to other parents of bullying victims at the school. If he could organize a group, they would have more strength to demand changes. He started with Peter's mother, the boy with the hearing aid, who appeared being humiliated in one of Walter's recordings. Sandra Miller was a hard-working woman who ran a small bakery with her husband. Mr. Michael, I didn't know your daughter was also a victim of those boys, Sandra said when he appeared in her bakery. How long has this been happening to Peter? Since the beginning of the school year. He would come home crying, saying the boys called him useless deaf kid and made mean gestures when he tried to follow the lessons. Have you tried talking to the school? Several times, but they always tell me it's normal teenage teasing, that Peter needs to toughen up and learn to defend himself. Michael felt the same outrage he had experienced when he heard similar answers about his daughter. Sandra, what would you say if I told you I have evidence that those boys do this systematically to several students? I'd say someone is finally taking this seriously. Michael showed some of Walter's recordings, being careful not to show anything that could identify the source. My God, Sandra said, covering her mouth with her hands. This is terrible. How do they dare do these things? Because they know there will be no consequences. But that might change if we join forces. Sandra immediately agreed to join any organized action against the bullies. Michael's next stop was the Newman family's house. Their daughter Jessica was the overweight girl who appeared in the recordings having her backpack deliberately soaked. Mary Newman was a retired teacher and was horrified to learn that the attacks against her daughter had been documented. Teacher Mary, you have experience with school administration. In your opinion, why does the administration protect these boys? Money, Mr. Michael. Pure and simple. Those families make substantial donations to the school. They pay for equipment, renovations, events. The administration is afraid of losing that financial support. But is that legal? Legal, yes. Ethical, no. Private schools depend on tuition and donations to operate. When you have very wealthy families willing to pay extra, the tendency is to protect them. And how can we fight this? Public exposure. The only thing these people fear more than losing money is losing their reputation. Michael left the Newman house with a clearer strategy. He needed to make the case public in a way that would force the school and the families to take action. That afternoon he received an unexpected call. It was Dorothy, the school cleaning staff. "Mr. Michael, I need to speak with you urgently," she said, whispering. "What happened?" "I can't talk on the phone. Can we meet?" They arranged to meet in a square near the school. When Michael arrived, he found Dorothy visibly nervous. "Sir, they found out I talked to you," she said. "How?" "The principal called me in this morning and said some influential parents suspected that someone at the school was passing information to you. She said if she found out who it was, the person would be fired immediately." Michael felt guilty for putting Dorothy at risk. "Dorothy, I'm sorry. I didn't want to—" "Don't worry, sir. I don't regret helping. But there's something I need to tell you. I overheard a conversation today that might interest you." "What conversation?" "The principal was talking on the phone with someone, thinking no one was around. She said they needed to speed up the plan to transfer your daughter from the school." "Transfer? What do you mean?" "From what I understood, they want to force Emily's departure. They're going to start creating difficulties, problems with grades, questioning her ability to keep up with the curriculum because of her disability." Michael felt his blood run cold. It was a cowardly but effective tactic. If they could question Emily's academic performance, they could suggest she would be happier at a specialized school. "Dorothy, thank you very much for warning me. I'll take measures." "Mr. Michael, these people have a lot of power. Be careful." Michael returned home with his mind racing. He needed to speed up his plans before they could harm Emily even more. That night, he talked to Sarah about the possibility of making the case public. "Michael, I'm scared," she said. "These people have a lot of money. They could sue us, they could harm your military career. Sarah, if we do nothing, they'll keep humiliating our daughter and other children. I can't live with that on my conscience." What if Emily doesn't want this to become a public scandal? It was a valid concern. Michael went upstairs to talk with his daughter. "Honey, I need to ask you something important," he said, sitting on her bed. "How would you feel if the whole city knew what happened to you?" Emily thought for a few seconds. "Dad, they already posted the video online. Everyone at school already knows. The difference is that now people are laughing at me. If the truth came out, at least they'd know I didn't deserve this." "Are you sure?" "Yes, Dad, I'm tired of hiding. I want them to pay for what they did." Michael felt proud of his daughter's courage. "Then let's do this the right way." The next day, Michael implemented his strategy. First, he called David, confirming he wanted to proceed with the news story. "David, I want this to become a full feature. Systematic bullying, school administration's neglect, attempts to intimidate the families. Everything." "Perfect, man. I've already spoken with a colleague who specializes in education. She wants to schedule an interview with you for tomorrow." Then Michael organized a meeting with all the victim families he had contacted. They scheduled it for that evening at Sandra Miller's house. When he arrived at the bakery at 8 p.m., Michael found not only Sandra and Mary Newman, but also 3 other parents who had learned about the meeting. "Mr. Michael," said a middle-aged man, who introduced himself as John Charles, father of a first-grade boy. "I heard you're organizing something against those boys. My son is also a victim of theirs. What kind of things do they do to him?" "They push him in the hallways, steal his snack, make him copy their homework. Tyler said if my son complains to anyone, he'll get beaten up." Michael realized the situation was even worse than he imagined. Tyler and Brandon weren't just casual bullies. They were true, systematic predators. "Everyone," said Michael, addressing the group. "I have evidence of everything these boys do. Recordings, testimonies, attempts to bribe and intimidate parents. But we need to act together to have enough strength." "What do you propose?" asked Mary Newman. "First, we'll make this public through the press. Second, we'll file a formal complaint with the state educational authorities. Third, we'll organize a peaceful protest in front of the school demanding changes." "What if they sue us?" asked Sandra. "Leave that to me. I have contacts who can help us with the legal side, and the truth is on our side. Everyone agreed with the plan. Michael left the meeting feeling he finally had a real chance to bring about justice. The next day, the journalist recommended by David, named Paula Mitchell, came to interview the Johnson family. She was a professional and sensitive woman who knew how to ask the right questions without traumatizing Emily. "Emily, can you tell me how you felt when that happened?" asked Paula. "I felt humiliated and small," answered Emily, her voice steady despite the emotion. "But not because I'm in a wheelchair. I felt that way because two people decided it was fun to hurt me. And later, when you saw the video on social media, it was worse because I saw that other people found it funny too. As if I were less human for having a disability." Paula turned to Michael. "Sergeant Johnson, what was your reaction when you learned about the incident?" "Anger, but also determination. My daughter is one of the strongest people I know. Seeing someone try to break that spirit was unacceptable." "Did you try to resolve this through the school's official channels?" "Yes, I did. But I encountered a wall of protectionism and neglect. It became clear that those boys are considered untouchable." "What evidence do you have to support your claims?" Michael showed some of the security footage, taking care to preserve Walter's identity. "My God," said Paula. "This is much more serious than I imagined. Can I use this footage in the report?" "Yes, you can, but I need you to protect my daughter's identity and that of the other victims." "Of course. We'll blur the faces and alter the voices, but this needs to be made public. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. 3 days later, Paula's report aired on the local television news. The impact was immediate and devastating. The segment showed the security footage with blurred faces, but it was impossible not to recognize the school and the severity of the acts. Paula had done an exceptional job contextualizing the systematic bullying and institutional neglect. At the end of the report, there was an interview with Michael still in his military uniform, speaking calmly but firmly about the need to protect all children in the community. The Johnson family's phone didn't stop ringing. Other parents of victims called offering support. Journalists from other cities wanted to know more details. Disability rights activists expressed solidarity. But the accused's reaction was swift and furious. The next morning, Michael received a call from Richard Thompson. "Johnson, you have no idea what you've just done," said Richard, his voice filled with anger. "I'll destroy you and your family." "Mr. Thompson, if you're threatening my family, I suggest you reconsider. I'm a trained military man, and all our conversations are being recorded." "Recorded? That's illegal." "Not when threats are involved. And now, your threat is recorded too." Richard hung up abruptly. An hour later, it was Charles Wilson's turn to call. "Johnson, you want war? Then you'll get war. I'll use all my contacts to make sure you're transferred to the most remote place possible in the country. Mr. Wilson, threatening military personnel is a federal crime. You're making things worse for yourself. We'll see who's making things worse, Johnson." Michael wasn't worried about the threats. He knew his military conduct was impeccable and that his superiors would support him. What he didn't expect was the call he received that afternoon. "Sergeant Johnson," said a formal female voice, "this is Colonel Parker's office. She would like to speak with you tomorrow at 8 in the morning." Michael knew Colonel Parker. She was a strict but fair woman, the commander of his unit. The summons could mean that political pressures had already reached his superiors. That evening, Michael talked with Sarah about the possibility of military retaliation. "What if they really transfer you?" she asked. "Then we'll fight from wherever we are. But I don't believe that will happen. The army doesn't like yielding to civilian pressures." "What if they try to harm Emily at school?" "That's why I need to speed up the other parts of the plan. If we get enough public pressure, they won't dare retaliate against her." The next morning, Michael reported promptly to Colonel Parker's office. She was a woman of about 50, with graying hair cut in military style and impeccable posture. "Sergeant Johnson, have a seat," she said, pointing to a chair. "I've received some interesting calls about you." "You can probably guess why, Colonel." "Two influential businessmen called the regional command yesterday, claiming you're using your military position to intimidate them. Michael maintained his formal posture. Colonel, I can explain exactly what happened. Please. Michael recounted the whole story from the beginning, including the bribery and intimidation attempts. The colonel listened without interrupting. Sergeant, do you have evidence to support your claims? Yes, Colonel. Recordings, documents, witnesses. And did you at any point use your military position inappropriately? Not at any point, Colonel. I always made it clear I was acting as a father, not as a soldier. The colonel thought for a few seconds. Johnson, I'll be direct. These men have important political connections. They could cause problems for the entire unit. Michael felt his heart race, but kept his composure. But, she continued, I won't let any civilians intimidate my soldiers for doing the right thing, especially when it involves protecting children. Colonel, Sergeant Johnson, you have my full support. If these businessmen want a political fight, they'll discover the U.S. Army doesn't yield to blackmail. Michael felt immense relief. Thank you, Colonel. There's one more thing, Johnson. I took the liberty of investigating these businessmen. Interesting how such respectable men have so many tax irregularities in their companies. Michael understood the message. The colonel was hinting that the accusers had much more to lose than to gain in a prolonged battle. With military support secured, Michael moved to the next phase of his plan, the formal complaint to educational authorities. Using his military contacts, he secured a meeting with the Regional Director of Education, Dr. Anthony Richardson, a respected educator with over 20 years of experience. Sergeant Johnson, said Dr. Richardson after reviewing all the presented material, this is extremely serious, not just the systematic bullying, but particularly the school administration's failure to act. Doctor, what would be the normal procedure in these cases? Normally, we'd open an internal inquiry, but considering the severity and public impact, I'll authorize an immediate full investigation. What does that mean? It means I'm sending a team of inspectors to the school tomorrow. They'll review all safety protocols, anti-bullying policies, incident documentation. If we find irregularities, the school could lose its operating license. Michael left the meeting knowing he'd finally achieved concrete official action. That afternoon, he organized the final parent group meeting to plan the peaceful demonstration in front of the school. Everyone, he said to the group gathered in Sandra's bakery room, we've secured support from the press, military authorities, and educational authorities. Now we need to show the community cares too. How many people do you think will show up? Asked John Charles. I don't know, but even if it's just us, we'll make our voices heard. Mr. Johnson, said Mary Newman, I can reach out to some former teacher colleagues. They're outraged about the situation. And I've spoken with other mothers from the bakery, added Sandra. Several want to participate. Michael felt the movement was gaining its own momentum. The night before the demonstration, he received an unexpected call. It was attorney Patricia Morgan. Mr. Johnson, my clients would like to propose a settlement. What kind of settlement? The boys would make a public apology to your daughter. The families would pay for psychological therapy for her and the other victims. And all the humiliating videos would be removed from social media. And in return, you would withdraw all public accusations and cancel tomorrow's demonstration. Michael thought for a few seconds. Ma'am, your clients have had several opportunities to resolve this civilly. They chose the path of intimidation and bribery. Now they'll have to face the public consequences of their actions. Mr. Johnson, my clients can make your life very difficult. Ma'am, your clients underestimated who they're dealing with. See you tomorrow. Michael hung up feeling confident. The desperate settlement attempts showed they had finally managed to pressure the accusers. On the day of the demonstration, Michael arrived in front of the school at 7 in the morning to organize everything. To his surprise, there were already at least 30 people waiting, including some he didn't know. Mr. Johnson, said a middle-aged woman approaching, I'm Rachel, mother of a former student at this school. My son was also a victim of bullying here 2 years ago. When I heard about the demonstration, I wanted to come support. Thank you very much, Rachel. Sir, more people are arriving, said Sandra, pointing to the street. Michael looked and saw several other people walking toward the school. Within minutes, the group had grown to more than 50 people. By 8 in the morning, when students began arriving for classes, there were already over 100 demonstrators in front of the school. All carried signs with anti-bullying messages and support for victims. Michael saw Emily arriving in the adapted school van. She looked at the crowd and then at her father with an emotional smile. "Dad, is all this because of me?" she asked, approaching in her wheelchair. "No, honey. This is all to make sure it never happens to any child again." The demonstration was peaceful and organized. The demonstrators chanted slogans about respect and dignity. Journalists from various stations covered the event. Around 9 in the morning, Michael saw an official car stop in front of the school. 3 people in suits emerged, clearly the inspectors sent by Dr. Richardson. Principal Margaret came running out of the school to greet them, visibly nervous. "Principal," said the chief inspector, loudly enough for Michael to hear. "I'm Dr. Mark Sanders from the Regional Board of Education. We've come to conduct a full inspection of this institution." "But no inspection was scheduled," protested Margaret. "Complaint-based inspections aren't scheduled, ma'am. We need to immediately review all safety protocols, anti-bullying policies and incident documentation from the last 2 years." Michael saw Margaret turning pale. He knew the school lacked proper protocols because he had personally witnessed the administration's negligence. Around 10 in the morning, a luxury car pulled up aggressively near the demonstration. Out stepped Richard Thompson and Charles Wilson, accompanied by 2 men who were clearly private security guards. "Johnson," shouted Richard, walking toward Michael. "This has gone too far." The demonstrators instinctively positioned themselves around Michael, forming a protective human barrier. "Mr. Thompson," Michael said calmly, "you have the right to be here, but not to disrupt our peaceful demonstration." "Demonstration? This is harassment. You're destroying the reputation of innocent boys." "Innocent?" intervened Mary Newman, stepping forward. "I have recordings showing your son systematically humiliating children." "Who is this woman?" asked Charles aggressively. "I'm a retired teacher and a victim's mother, and I won't accept you minimizing our children's suffering." More demonstrators approached, creating an ever larger circle around the businessmen. Michael realized the situation could get out of control. "Everyone," he said, raising his voice, "remember we came here in peace. Let's not stoop to their level." Richard and Charles realized they were clearly outnumbered and withdrew, but not before Richard yelled, "This isn't over, Johnson." Around 11 in the morning, the inspectors left the school carrying several boxes of documents. Dr. Sanders approached the protesters. "Mr. Johnson," he called. "Yes, doctor. We've found serious irregularities. This school lacks proper anti-bullying protocols, doesn't document incidents of violence between students, and we found evidence that several cases were deliberately ignored by the administration." A murmur of satisfaction ran through the crowd. "What does that mean?" asked Michael. "It means the school will have 15 days to adjust all its protocols or have its license suspended. Additionally, the principal will be removed immediately for investigation." The news of Margaret's removal spread quickly among the protesters. For the first time since the whole situation began, Michael felt that justice was being done. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. Around noon, when the protest was already dispersing, Michael saw a group of students coming out of the school toward the protesters. Among them were Tyler and Brandon. Michael instinctively positioned himself in front of Emily, ready to protect her from any new humiliation. But to his complete surprise, Tyler approached him with his head down. "Mr. Johnson," he said, his voice trembling, "can I talk to Emily?" "That depends on what you want to say," replied Michael, suspicious. Tyler looked at the protesters around him, and then at Emily. "I want to apologize, for real." "Tyler, this isn't the time for games," warned Michael. "It's not a game, sir. I saw on television what we did. I saw how we hurt Emily and other classmates. My grandmother made me watch the whole report and then talk to me." Michael looked at Emily, who nodded, indicating she wanted to listen. "Emily," said Tyler, approaching the wheelchair, "I apologize, from the bottom of my heart. What I did was terrible and cowardly." "Why did you do it?" asked Emily, looking directly into his eyes. Tyler took a deep breath before answering. "Because I thought it was funny. Because my parents always told me I was better than others, because I never stopped to think about how you felt. And now you have. Now I have. My grandmother told me she also had a disability when she was young. She explained how painful it is to be treated as less human because of it. Brandon approached too. Emily, I also apologize. I have no excuse for what we did. It was cruel and wrong. Michael watched the scene carefully, still suspicious that it might be some kind of performance directed by parents or lawyers. Boys, he said, words are easy. How can I know you're being sincere? Because we want to do more than apologize, replied Tyler. We want to try to make up for what we did. How? First, we'll delete all the mean videos and posts from our social media. Second, we want to make a public video apologizing and explaining why bullying is wrong. Third, Tyler hesitated before continuing. Third, we want to volunteer helping people with disabilities, to learn to truly respect them. Michael looked at Emily, who seemed as surprised as he was. Sweetie, what do you think? Emily was silent for a few seconds, clearly processing the situation. I think everyone deserves a second chance, but I want to see actions, not just words. You will, promised Tyler. We'll prove we've changed. And do your parents know you're here? Asked Michael. No, admitted Brandon. They forbade us from talking to you, but we decided we couldn't keep pretending we did nothing wrong. Michael felt for the first time that there might be hope for a truly constructive resolution. Boys, if you're serious, I'll give you a chance to prove it. But any slip-up, any sign this is just an act, and you'll face every possible legal consequence. We understand, sir, said Tyler. And don't expect it to be easy to regain people's trust. You hurt a lot of people. We know that, said Brandon. We're prepared to work hard to fix our mistakes. That afternoon, after the protest ended and everyone left, Michael sat down with Emily and Sarah to process everything that had happened. Dad, do you believe they're serious? Asked Emily. I don't know, honey. But I think everyone deserves a chance at redemption. The important thing is not to let our guard down. What if they go back to bullying? Then they'll find out this time there won't be protection from anyone. Now the whole community is watching. In the following days, Michael was impressed by the boys' change in attitude. Tyler and Brandon actually deleted all offensive content from their social media and posted a joint video apologizing not just to Emily, but to all bullying victims. Even more impressive, they approached Michael asking where they could do volunteer work with people with disabilities. Mr. Johnson, said Tyler one afternoon when he showed up at the family's house, we got in touch with an institution that serves children with disabilities. They said they need volunteers for recreational activities. And are you sure you want to do this? Yes, we do. We want to learn to see people as people, not as limitations. Michael decided to support the initiative, but with supervision. All right, but I'll accompany you for the first few weeks. I want to make sure you're there for the right reasons. 3 weeks later, Michael was at the institution watching Tyler and Brandon playing with a group of children with different types of disabilities. What he saw pleasantly surprised him. The two teenagers were genuinely engaged, helping the children with patience and care. There were no signs of discomfort or condescension in their behavior. Mr. Johnson, said the institution's coordinator, Marina Lewis, your protégés are doing very well. The children like them, and they seem to be learning a lot about empathy. Ms. Lewis, they're not my protégés. They're young people who made serious mistakes and are trying to redeem themselves. I understand. Well, whatever the initial motivation, what matters is that they're doing genuine work here. 1 month after starting the volunteer work, Michael noticed a real change in Tyler and Brandon's behavior. They were not only getting along better with Emily at school, but had also become defenders of other children who suffered bullying. The most significant change came when Michael received a call from John Charles, father of the boy who had been bullied by the two. Mr. Johnson, I have to tell you something amazing, said John Charles. Yesterday my son came home saying Tyler and Brandon defended him from some older boys who were picking on him. Defended him how? They stopped the bullies and explained how bullying hurts people. They said they knew because they had been bullies themselves. Michael felt deep satisfaction. Finally, it seemed all the struggle had been worth it. But the ultimate test was still to come. 3 months after the initial incident, the school organized a general assembly to present the new anti-bullying policies that had been implemented following the investigation. The new principal, teacher Christina Moore, an experienced educator brought in specifically to reshape the school culture, invited Michael to speak at the assembly. "Sergeant Johnson," she said, "I'd like you to share your experience and talk about the importance of a school community united against bullying." Michael accepted the invitation, but suggested that Emily also speak. On the day of the assembly, the school auditorium was packed. Students, parents, teachers, and staff filled every available seat. When Michael took the stage accompanying Emily in her wheelchair, a respectful silence fell over the audience. "Good afternoon," Michael began. "3 months ago, I was here as a desperate father trying to protect his daughter. Today I'm here as a member of this community who believes in the possibility of change." He briefly recounted the entire journey, from the initial incident to the transformations that had occurred. "I learned that bullying isn't just the responsibility of the victims or the bullies," he said. "It's the responsibility of the entire community. When we allow intimidation to thrive, we all become accomplices." Then it was Emily's turn to speak. "My name is Emily Johnson," she said, her voice clear and confident. 3 months ago I was here as an ashamed and frightened victim. Today I'm here as a young woman who learned that having a disability doesn't make me inferior to anyone." She paused, looking at the audience. "When Tyler and Brandon spilled juice on me, I thought my world had ended. But actually, that's when a new story began. A story of brave people coming together to protect those who can't protect themselves." Emily looked directly at Tyler and Brandon, who were sitting in the front row. "I also learned that people can change, that past mistakes don't have to define anyone's future. Tyler and Brandon hurt me deeply, but they also taught me about forgiveness and second chances." There was a moved silence in the auditorium. "That's why I want to propose something," Emily continued. "Let this school become an example of how a community can transform itself. Let each of us commit to never again allowing anyone to be humiliated for being different." The audience erupted in applause. Michael saw tears in many people's eyes, including teacher Christina's and even Richard and Charles's, who had attended the assembly. After the assembly, Tyler and Brandon approached Michael and Emily. "Mr. Johnson, Emily," said Tyler, "we want to thank you." "Thank you for what?" asked Michael. "For not giving up on us, for giving us the chance to become better people." "You earned that chance," replied Emily. "Nobody gave you anything for free." "That's true," agreed Brandon, "but you could have chosen just to punish us. Instead, you showed us a path to redeem ourselves." 6 months later, Michael was in the school auditorium again, but this time for a very different ceremony. It was Emily's high school graduation. When the moment came for Emily to receive her diploma, something extraordinary happened. Tyler and Brandon, who had become official school volunteers for inclusion matters, asked permission to accompany her on stage. "Emily," said Tyler at the microphone, "when we first met, I was on the wrong side of history. You taught me that courage isn't about humiliating others, but about standing up for what's right even when it's difficult. And you taught me," added Brandon, "that true strength comes from helping others stand up, not from knocking them down." The two young men, who had once been Emily's worst nightmares, were now proudly pushing her wheelchair across the stage as the entire audience rose in an emotional standing ovation. Michael Johnson felt tears streaming down his face. He looked at Sarah and saw she was also crying with emotion. "We did it," he whispered. "Did what?" asked Sarah. "We showed that justice and compassion can go hand in hand, that it's possible to punish wrongdoing without destroying people, that the real victory is when everyone comes out better from the experience." In the ceremony's closing speech, teacher Christina Moore made sure to mention the transformation the school had undergone. "This class witnessed and participated in one of the most important lessons a school can teach," she said, "that it's not enough to simply avoid doing wrong. You must have the courage to actively fight against it, and when a community unites around the right values, miraculous transformations can happen." After the ceremony, several people approached Michael to thank him for his courage in not giving up the fight. "Mr. Johnson," said Rachel, the mother who had supported the protest. "My son is in a better school now, but he always remembers what you did. He said when he grows up, he wants to be as brave as you." Mrs. Rachel, courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing the right thing even when you are scared. Richard Thompson also approached, something Michael hadn't expected. "Johnson," he said, extending his hand, "I need to admit I was wrong, completely wrong." "Mr. Thompson, my son became a better person after all this, more empathetic, more humane. I was so focused on protecting him from consequences that I forgot to teach him about responsibility." Michael shook the offered hand. "It's never too late to learn, Mr. Thompson." "That's true, and I want you to know that from now on my company will sponsor inclusion and anti-bullying programs in several schools in the area." Charles Wilson also made a similar approach, informing that his company would build accessibility ramps in all public schools in the city, free of charge. "You know, Johnson," said Charles, "my son told me something that really struck me. He said he learned that true strength is about protecting those in need, not attacking the vulnerable." 1 year later, Michael was back in a school, but this time as a guest speaker. Several educational institutions in the region had requested he share his experience to educate their communities about bullying and inclusion. "The most important lesson I learned," he told an audience of educators, "is that bullying isn't an individual problem. It's a systemic problem that requires a systemic response." "Sergeant Johnson," a teacher asked, "what was the most difficult moment in this whole journey?" Michael thought for a few seconds. "It was when I realized punishing the bullies wasn't enough. We needed to help them transform. Because punishment without education only creates resentment, not real change." "And what was the most rewarding moment?" "It was seeing my daughter pushing a younger child's wheelchair at school, teaching her that having a disability doesn't make her inferior. It was seeing the boys who once humiliated her become defenders of other vulnerable children. It was realizing we had created a positive cycle instead of just interrupting a negative one." Today, 5 years after the initial incident, Emily is in college studying psychology with a specialization in inclusion. She maintains a blog about disability rights that's read by thousands of people. Tyler graduated in social work and works at an NGO serving children in vulnerable situations. Brandon is studying education and plans to specialize in inclusive education. St. Vincent Academy has become a regional benchmark for anti-bullying policies and inclusion programs. Teacher Christina has received several awards for her transformative leadership. Michael, who was promoted to corporal, is frequently invited to give talks about leadership, justice, and the importance of never giving up on doing the right thing. In one of his most recent speeches, he concluded with a reflection that sums up his entire journey. "I learned that true courage isn't about winning a war, but about turning enemies into allies. It's not about destroying those who have wronged us, but about helping them become better. And I learned that when we fight for justice with compassion, everyone comes out a winner in the end." The Johnson family remains united and stronger than ever. Emily has become a confident and determined young woman, using her experience to help others overcome similar challenges. And every time Michael looks at his daughter, he feels proud not only of her strength and determination, but also for having learned from her that forgiveness is not a sign of weakness, but the greatest demonstration of strength a human being can give. The story that began with tears of humiliation ended with tears of gratitude. A lesson for an entire community that when the right people come together for the right reasons, even the most desperate situations can turn into opportunities for growth and redemption. The small school in Chicago has become a symbol that real change is possible when communities decide they will no longer tolerate injustice, but also believe in the human capacity for transformation and growth. And Emily, the girl who once cried alone in her wheelchair, now smiles confidently knowing that her pain was not in vain, as it became the driving force behind a change that impacted the lives of hundreds of other children. Because sometimes, the greatest victories don't come from destroying our opponents, but from helping them discover the best version of themselves. And sometimes, the greatest heroes aren't those who win battles, but those who build bridges, where there were once only walls of hatred and misunderstanding. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story of transformation and overcoming. Do you believe Tyler and Brandon really changed? Have you witnessed similar bullying situations? Leave your opinion in the comments. We really want to know your perspective. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other inspiring stories like this one.